Seeing as how it is 7:02 and we have a quorum of select board members, the chair will call to order the Thursday, December 17th iteration of the Norton Select Board. Let the record show that 4 of the 5 members are present. Arts is unable to be here this evening, and we have Town Manager Michael Units. This will be, at a certain point, a joint meeting between ourselves and members of the Charter Commission. We will work our way through the agenda until we get there. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're having a happy evening on this snow-filled Thursday. Let's get it started. We have an appointment this evening. Mr. Toole, would you like to read that in?
I'm actually, if anyone else has it in front of them, I do not have it in front of me just yet, Jack. I apologize.
Not a problem. We received a letter via Renee as chair of the EDC requesting Sharon Rice to be appointed to a recently vacated spot on there. Renee, I'm assuming you're supporting of that appointment?
Yes, and we are very excited for her participation, given her experience in the town and knowledge of the business owners. I think she'd be a great addition to the commission.
All right. Hearing that, Chair would entertain a motion to appoint Sharon Rice as a member of the Economic Development Committee.
So moved.
Seconded. So moved.
All right. We'll go to the vote. Brad?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Renee?
Yes.
And I too vote yes. Congratulations to Sharon. She does a lot for this town. That's really exciting. Good for her.
I'm all set. I'm all set with licenses and all that.
Okay. I think you may have been signing on, as we mentioned. We're going to jump the order a little bit and take item number 2 under new business, discussion and/or vote to approve the ESCO contract and authorize the chair of the select board to sign. This involves Matt Wells from the school system, so we wanted him here to talk about the status of that. So Mike and/or Matt, you want to take us away here?
Sure. So we've got the investment grade audit contract ready to be signed. Train is geared up, ready to go. They've already started a lot of the groundwork, pulling some energy information, utilizing our account numbers. So they're ready to launch into the audit of the buildings as soon as we sign this contract and get it off to them.
And Matt, can you explain just what exactly is involved in the audit?
Sure. So with the audit, they come in and it's going to take a couple of months, probably about 3 months. And they'll go through all of the buildings. They'll identify all of the energy usage in all the buildings, all of the boilers, what type of air handler units, everything. Look at the roofs, everything that has to do with energy efficiency, water, electricity, gas, and fuel usage. And then they'll come up, that audit will put together a set of projects with expected savings from those projects that we can kind of pick from over the next 20 years to implement, utilizing the future savings to pay for.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Matt. One of the things, Matt, that I just had, and not trying to, it's more for informational. How does this contract's a long contract? How does technologies change, right? I mean, I think if we decided to somehow wind and solar basically became the driving force, at schools or something, how would that kind of be, how would they work that? I mean, is this part of that? Would that be the contract need to be renegotiated, or would they be looking at changes in technology as well?
Yeah. So, exactly as you said, they flow with the new technologies. They're going to get us the most up-to-date, most advanced technology we can use. So we're talking about doing solar carports or solar on the roofs of the buildings. They're going to get the most advanced solar at that point in time. And the beauty is that, solar's moving fast. It's a great example. So they're here for 20 years. So we put that solar in and we go 5 years down the road and we start to have a problem with it because it's older technology or the newer technology is better. They're still here. So they'll be here. They'll then redo the project, and then somehow figure out if it's going to generate more savings to put in new technology versus retaining the old technology. So that's kind of the beauty of having a 20-year relationship with these folks. You do the project, and when you start to have issues with it a few years down the road, which you do with every project, they're still here. They're not gone. So they're right there. They're right back into it and helping you to problems pop up or advance any technologies that may come along.
Right, because I mean, the idea that maybe we're still doing boilers and all that 20 years from now, I would hope we're farther along than that 20 years from now.
It's a funny world right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Matt, is this a one-time audit, or do they come back every 5, 10, 15 years?
So it's
a one-time list? Yes,
they do one big audit and identify everything within your buildings, and then sort of give you that audit results, and you have those as projects that are in front of you. As you start doing the projects, they're here. They almost kind of live with you a little bit in your buildings. So it's not sort of a fixed, I guess, set of projects. It's sort of like they've identified everything they could at that time. But to Mike's point, if they're working here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, and all of a sudden they say, hey, wait a minute, we could do this, and it would actually give you a lot of savings from that. They'll put that project together and then give you that as a new project. So it's sort of like they'll continue to grow with you, but this initial audit is just like everything all at once. Here's where you're at, sort of your benchmark point, and here we're moving forward.
Great. And has the cost for this been incorporated in budget somewhere, whether it's the municipal or school?
So the cost for the audit is $33,000. However, if you start doing projects, you don't pay that audit price. They make that up within the projects as you move forward. So it gets blended in. You don't have to write a check for $33,000 and be done. As long as you're doing projects, it just it's sort of, as they're getting business, it just disappears, kind of absorbed into the project.
When would we need to start a project in order to offset that 33, or to have them waive the 33?
Well, the beauty is that right away, we know that at least the Hay, we've got a very old boiler there, so we're going to definitely be having to start some projects there, which probably are going to have a decent amount of savings to it. Those are pretty old boilers. We definitely want to look at solar and see that. So I think the risk of us having to come up with that money out of pocket, it's almost none, because we are definitely, on the school side, we're definitely going to move forward. I know on the town side, we've got a couple of buildings that we're looking to replace, so they may be a little slower on the town side, but as long as we're all together on this with a signed contract, we're moving forward with projects, and you guys benefit from that as well.
Okay, that's great. So initially I know the boiler project was approved at the fall town meeting, so you're using existing capital projects to start.
Oh, I was referencing the Hay boiler. Right now we have the HVAC unit at the middle school is our issue right now. I think that was the one from the fall, if I'm correct.
All right.
Yeah, the Hay one's that's a pretty big project. Very, very long building.
Mike, can you share a bit from your perspective and what buildings would be involved for this?
Well, obviously, as Matt just said, we plan on hopefully replacing the town hall and the senior center. So the buildings involved would be the police station, the highway department, the fire stations.
Okay, nothing on the water side? They don't. Hopefully, their new water treatment plant doesn't need any energy improvements. Hopefully, that was designed to take that into account. And then the building that they're in, I don't know what could be done there, but obviously that's something that would be looked at. And their pump stations. Okay.
I know that the water treatment plant. I'd rather ask now than find out later down the road that they have taken this technology. Can we just ask the questions this week? You would think. You're absolutely right, but I want to just make sure.
Yeah, they'll look at it, I'm sure.
Yeah, water's a big one that we want to talk to them about too. Certainly, that's definitely a savings point for everybody.
One other question, and I've completely forgotten on it. Anybody else? Oh, I see a public comment. Mr. Dorney?
Yeah, how you doing? Thank you, Jack. Quick question for Matt. Is this an exclusive with Train as far as the equipment, or is Train really just managing the ESCO, or do they have the primary print position with the equipment?
Yeah, a lot of times I think when you have these contracts, you're dealing with Train, and they'll recommend Train equipment, usually at a savings over what you could purchase it at wholesale or on the market. So yeah, they will recommend, and then that's part of it. Is they definitely, that's why these companies really they fight pretty hard to try and get these contracts, because they will recommend their equipment.
That was my only concern with the process, that I was hoping that would have an ESCO that didn't have equipment to supply, because now I don't want to be tied to one company for their equipment.
All right. Just to follow up to that, sometimes there are cases where part of the equipment, a controller, an integrated controller, or whatever, may not complement an existing piece of equipment that you're trying to tie it into. And there could be some problems there, but if they're going to be committed to it, I guess, but I know that other cities have had problems, but there's been some success stories as well. But I know, the city of Quincy had some issues where they got into some legal matters and had to actually walk out of the contract, and it was pretty expensive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dorney, for that. Mike or Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. Do any of these projects still need to go up for a competitive bid, correct?
So the actual projects themselves would be what you're really buying. One of the things you're buying into is you're utilizing Train as a project manager. So you don't necessarily have to go out for bid for the projects, but the financing we would have to talk about. So we would actually utilize future savings to pay any kind of borrowing, but you might have to borrow money to pay for the project, and the borrowing would have to be done competitively.
Okay, so if there's a $150,000 boiler project, that would just go to Train directly?
Yes.
And that is legal with the state's procurement laws?
Yeah, this is an alternate procurement method that's exempt from Chapter 30B, because it sort of has its own process for governing how bids are done and how the projects are handled.
Just to follow up to that, will that supersede our, I think we did an article bylaw a couple of years ago with a 7-year ceiling on contracts for equipment, non-personnel contracts?
Right. Yeah. This is governed by MGL 2511. So you're allowed to enter into this contract. It's by nature a 20-year contract through the statute.
Okay, thank you.
Hey Matt, didn't we have a list? I'm scrolling through the pages, but I thought at some point we had a list of all the buildings that were in scope.
Yeah, we put every building on there. So I contacted the insurance company for the town and got them to send me the list of every building that we insured, including sheds. And we threw everything onto that list just to have that ability to say it's all in there. So, if we have a shed that's sitting over by a field somewhere and we want to put one solar panel on it, we have the ability to do that. So we wanted to make sure we had everything in there, and it was all encompassing for the town.
Okay. Go ahead, Jack.
So I'm sorry, you can find that it's actually in the RFP, which I believe is still posted on the Norton Public Schools website. But if it's not there, I'll make sure that it goes back up.
I'm just looking at what's in our packet, and I didn't see it there, so I'm sure it is up there. I can take a look.
Okay, let me know if it's not. I'll make sure to check tomorrow, and if it came down, because usually we'll pull the bids down when we're done, we'll pop it right back up there so everybody has access to it.
Okay, that'd be great.
So sorry, when I was interjecting, so you mentioned having to go to the insurance company to get the list of properties. Did we not have anything in town, Mike? And if we didn't, can we use that list that Matt got to create one?
We have a list every year when the insurance company prices the insurance. I mean, we have a list that goes with our insurance, so that's the easiest way to have it. We give them the list so they can insure the buildings.
Okay, so Matt, you had to go to the insurance company to get a list of properties that we gave them? That seems a little bit weird.
It does seem strange. I've done it in the past too. In previous districts, it was very easy. They could get that list to you real fast. They had it sitting right there, and usually with updated information, because we do go through it and look at it every year and submit them anything that's new on it.
And Matt, if we do get the town hall and the council on aging approved and we have new buildings, those, because they're already in the list, fall under it, right? So if there were an issue 10 years down the road?
That's correct. They would be able to jump right on it. And that was the reason we had them in there, knowing that we were going to go for new buildings. I wanted to make sure we had the buildings in there, and now it just becomes those are the new buildings. And certainly also they can act as an advisor to us, like when we're building those buildings. If there's any energy related questions we have, we can certainly bring them into a room and talk to them about it and get their take on what we should be doing as far as energy systems.
That's great, thank you.
My last question, Matt, is the library included on that? I know the ownership of that is a little bit wonky.
Yeah, we threw it on there too.
Okay.
we just wanted to make sure, and I know that one is a little funny, but we just put it on there and said, okay, well, it doesn't hurt to have it on the list, and it's always beneficial if, 5 years down the road, we want to do something that's energy efficient, it's there and we can do it.
Fantastic. Any other questions from the board?
Jack, I do have one. Mike, this is actually to you, and Jack, you may know this from the PBC. What is the difference with the audits that Train would do and then like the building envelope study? Like do they kind of work hand in hand? Is it duplicative?
Well, a building envelope study would look at foundations. I don't know if that's something Train's going to be looking at. They're looking at more energy, so roofs, windows, doors. But an envelope study would then, if you did a full envelope study, all this would be included. But if this is being done by the ESCO, then the building committee would only have to look at the structural issues.
Okay, so could that be a potential cost savings, Mike, that we don't need like the full envelope study for some of these buildings that are in scope or that we have planned to be audited?
It probably will be, yeah.
Okay, and is the PBC and Matt, are you guys working together just to make sure we don't have any spend that unnecessarily we don't need?
We're still communicating with the PBC, so there's still we have that relationship. Certainly with Mike's guidance, we'd be happy to make sure we're all on the same page.
And Brian from the PBC's been involved.
Yeah, he was on the evaluation team, so.
Excellent. Anything else? All right. Thank you, Matt, for explaining that. And I believe now Chair would entertain a motion to vote to approve the ESCO contract.
So moved.
Second, and authorize the chairman to sign.
Yes, thank you, Brad. Yep. We have a motion and a second. Brad?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Renee?
Yes.
And I too vote yes. So, well, Matt, thank you very much for all your hard work on that. That's, I know this has been a long time brewing, and it's good to push this across the, not the finish line, but I guess the starting line.
Well, thank you guys for signing the contract and letting us charge it forward.
Thanks, Matthew.
Have fun on
All
the
right,
school.
everyone have a great holiday.
Thanks,
You
Matt,
as
you too. Bye-bye.
Right, excellent. Bounce back to the agenda here. Any complaints if we continue going out of order? Because I suspect more people would be interested in our meeting with the Charter Commission than us reading license renewals.
I was thinking somebody might want to hear about the cable.
We'll go in order then. We'll do the Charter Commission. Mrs. Parker, I believe you're on if you want to call your board meeting to order.
Hi there. In looking at the attendance list, we had a couple of folks last minute who were unable to attend, one of whom was Kevin, who unfortunately had to pull a double and was unexpectedly unable to make it. In looking at the participant list right now, it would appear that the Charter Commission does not have a quorum, so I am not going to call our meeting to order, and we'll consider the Charter Commission meeting that we posted an agenda for this evening canceled. But I did ask Jen to amend the Select Board Charter to advise that it would be a discussion with the Charter Commission members, and since we're not voting on anything this evening, we can proceed with our update. That works for you guys?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to introduce, actually, I just wanted to figure out who's here. So it looks like in attendance is myself, Sandy Ollerhead, and Carrie Snyder from the Charter Commission. I'm just going to see if we're expecting one other person, possibly. I don't see them, but if they want to pop on, they'll pop. So I just wanted to thank the Select Board for giving us a chance to provide you folks with an update and discuss what our next steps are. We are very pleased to advise that after 20 months of work, the Charter Commission's final report and charter is complete and is available to review on our page on the town's website. I'm going to go ahead and assume that everybody here is already familiar with the highlights of the charter from attending our public hearings. I just wanted to update you. There were no material changes between the preliminary charter and the final version. We added a table of contents, we cleaned up some formatting, and we made a few clarifications where things were not as clear as they could be. But there were no material changes between the preliminary and the final. With regards to the report, we did make a few updates. Upon review of questions that we received and things that we heard at public hearings, one of the things that we added was an entirely new section that discusses the process by which a charter is changed. We wanted to emphasize within that report that a town's charter is not meant to be a static document. It's meant to be adapted to reflect changes in the town, respond to the needs of its residents, and that new section explains how various updates to the charter can be made, including our process. We also added a specific section related to what effect the new charter has on a Proposition 2.5 question. The short answer of that is being none. But since this has been the Commission's most consistently asked question, we felt we needed to have it formally documented. There was also a bit of misinformation that we heard early on in the process that the charter itself or an update in the form of government can change the override process or take away a resident's right to vote on an override. So we wanted to put it in there, and I'm going to state here again for the record, under Massachusetts general law, a Proposition 2.5 question, whether that happens to be an override, a debt exclusion, or an underride, must always be presented on a ballot and approved by the voters. Neither the Charter Commission nor the Charter can change that. And finally, within the report, the last change that we made, we added a section called Final Thoughts, and it consists of some of the areas for improvement that we had addressed within our preliminary report. We decided to set them off in their own section. We added some things that we heard in our public hearings. These are things that either fell outside the scope of the Charter Commission or things we didn't feel we wanted to set so firmly in stone, but make folks aware of going forward. So these are ideas and suggestions for the likes of the Transition Committee, the Town Manager, and the Town Council to keep in mind as they go forward. In terms of next steps, as you know, the Charter Commission will be seeking the voters' approval of its recommended changes on the April 10th ballot next year. And to that end, the ballot question and the ballot summary have already been provided to Lucia. I will also shortly be sending her the files of our final report and charter. Both of those need to be physically mailed to all households with at least one registered voter, and then be made available for distribution at least 2 weeks prior to the election. So I'll be working with Lucia on that. And then in the coming months, prior to the election, we'll be making the rounds to various other boards and committees who are also kind enough to attend our meetings and share their thoughts and ideas. We're putting together a list of frequently asked questions to help educate voters about the charter recommendations, and we'll be engaging in various forms of education and outreach for the next 3 months. So, up until this point, we will have volunteered nearly 2 years of our lives to the process by the time our term ends after the election. It is an undertaking that not one of us has taken lightly. We have read and analyzed and discussed and debated the merits of every possible option for every single decision. We did the work we were entrusted to do, and I'm proud of the Commission and its recommendations. I think we're all pleased with the product, and we believe it is the correct path forward for the town of Norton. At this time, we hope we can count on the Select Board's support by not only publicly endorsing the final charter, but also by helping us position it for the greatest chance of success. And just as a reminder, the Charter Commission is statutorily mandated to present its ballot question on the April 21 election. We don't have the luxury of deferring it to any other date. So we respectfully also ask that the Select Board carefully review and thoughtfully consider any ballot questions or spring warrant articles that could be viewed as competing or potentially in conflict with the Charter Commission. And I am happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Laura, that was awesome. Thank you. And as soon as you said the April thing, I started thinking, while you have a requirement to present or to have that on the vote, if by chance the election gets moved, does that impact you guys at all with the timing? Like, do we need to consider that if something changes with COVID?
No, I think it has to be in the election that is deemed, the formal election that is set by bylaw for the town. So we would have to follow whatever, if there was a change in the date, we would follow that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Can I answer any other questions?
Open it up to the board.
I have another.
Sure.
In respect to if the charter passes, is there another election in which a town council is voted, or does that happen kind of like the Charter Commission happened and you vote not only for that item but also for its potential members?
Excellent question. Thank you. No, if the charter passes, the Select Board would actually have to call for a special election, and the charter actually calls for a special election to be held on a convenient date in June 2021, no earlier than 64 days from the date that the board calls for the election. So in this particular instance, in order to get a election in June that falls within 64 days of the announcement, the Select Board would need to choose an election date somewhere between April 11th and April 27th for future reference.
But we would have to just choose the election date? It
Yes,
would not
so
have
you
to be held during that time?
Nope, you would call for a special election to be held on a convenient date in June of 2021. And then the town clerk will make available a schedule and nomination papers for anybody who wishes to run for the office of town council.
Okay, and I suspect you guys will keep us honest so we don't miss any potential deadlines?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, and then there's also a charter transition committee that kicks in, and I'm trying to remember when that actually happens, if it is at directly after the election, or if it is directly after the April election or the town council special election. Bear with me. Immediately after passage of the charter, a transition committee shall immediately be formed.
And who, that, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you want to know who's on it?
Who forms it?
Sure. So the membership of the transition committee shall include the select board chair or its designee, the charter commission chair or the chair's designee, 2 members of the charter commission as determined by the commission, 2 members of the finance committee or their designees, the town moderator or the town moderator's designee. However, if any of those members listed want to file nomination papers for the office of town council, they have to resign from the transition committee, and the town manager will then appoint a person in its place.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really would just like to reiterate the folks that may be listening or reading about this, just how much work has been involved by the 9 volunteers that undertook this. How many different town charters did you guys read, if you had to put a ballpark on it?
Formally, I'm going to say it was probably close to 20. I'm sure a few of us read some additional ones here and there to try and find some of the tastier tidbits or ideas. 20 is a conservative. We made sure that we selected charters from all types of forms of government, including our own, to see if there was, other towns doing a town meeting form of government that might be working for them and could potentially work for us. So we looked at representative town meeting. We also looked at open town meeting and town council form of government.
And again, the time commitment that was involved was, twice a month for nearly 2 years, all in publicly open meetings, inviting the community to come in at any point to listen in. The process has been transparent and arduous, and I'm just very happy for all of you guys to have pushed this as far as you have. And personally speaking, you guys have my full support. When you think about government, it's not about finding a soulmate. You want to try to find the one that gets you closer to where you want to be than you are today. And I think from my personal standpoint, this charter does exactly that. So kudos to you all, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Any other questions? Anything I can answer for anybody?
All right, I'm hearing a lot of crickets out there.
Yeah?
Jack, I have a question. Just Laura, I'm sure you guys have thought about this, like what, I know you mentioned about, obviously our vote tonight and then support afterwards. What ideas do you have for us to help support this and communicate the initiative across the town?
Thank you. That's very helpful. At this point, we're going to probably regroup in January. We're taking a slight break for the holidays. And we're going to put a game plan together in terms of how to best do outreach and in what form that takes. And we appreciate the willingness to be able to assist us with that. I think I would just like to reiterate, I think one of the best ways that you can help us is to try and create as little noise, for lack of a better word, or distraction with some of the other potential warrant articles or any potential questions, if there are going to be any on the April ballot, to the extent that you have the ability to perhaps defer those to another day or date and time. That would be, I think that would be the best help to us, and we will certainly take you up on your offer to potentially assist us at some future point if needed on education and outreach.
Yeah, of course. And do you have an idea now of the things that have been discussed in respect to the things that you prefer not to see on the ballot? If you're
you
can come back on that too if you want to regroup.
There's a couple of things. Ideally, I think we would very much prefer there not be a debt exclusion question on the same ballot as the charter question. I think we have the potential of getting lost and not being able to. I think we're going to be drowned out a lot by the other noise.
Mr. Chairman, I worry that I understand that everything's good intention about talking about what's on the ballot and not on the ballot, but part of me feels like it's inappropriate because there are procedures that are in place that would say that. I don't mean any disrespect to the Charter Commission, but I just worry that there are procedures that people from the town can decide to bring on here, and I just want to make sure that we're not interfering with the normal procedures that are in place for town elections. So I just want to caveat it. I don't know. It seems like we're interfering with what could be on the ballot naturally.
I appreciate that, Michael, but I mean it's just an opinion, right?
Okay. Okay. I just want to. What I don't want to do is make it sound like we're saying these things are that we're telling people in the town that we're not going to put certain things on the ballot, and they have every right to come to us and ask for things to be put onto the ballot, and I just want to make sure that we're not churning people away from that process, right?
I agree, and I think that would be further discussions, and I mean I'm sure that the Charter Commission is aware that it's been communicated multiple times about the PVC being ready to present at I know the town meeting, and I think the expectation was also at the election. Jack, I don't know if you can comment on that, just being closer to it.
I think that is the intent, that they want to be ready for an April ballot and then the May town meeting. Yeah. But ultimately, I think the point is here that anything like that would need to get approved by the select board to go on the ballot. So I think asking Mrs. Parker's opinion on that is fine. That debate and discussion is certainly not for today, but it's going to be up to us to make that decision about what else joins that ballot.
Yeah, I also don't want us to be promoting that we're not, to give the perception that, we obviously will have debate later on down the road what's on the ballot and what's not on the ballot, but I don't want to give the impression that we're trying to turn people away from that.
Nope, not at all. It's very fair.
Again, it is just our preference, and we just ask that the select board understand that we personally do not have a choice on the date that our question goes on the ballot, whereas everything else is sort of negotiable.
Perfect.
Very good. Any questions from members of the audience? Comments? We have a few folks with us tonight, which is great to see. don't see anybody jumping up, so Laura and the rest of the Charter Commission members, thank you very much for joining. Have a great and safe holiday.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Great work.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Units, while on the topic of the Charter Commission, I know we had some correspondence with Town Council about the Charter Committee that can be appointed in years ending in 0. So we'd ask for an opinion on that. Would you like to just summarize that and let us know where we stand?
Basically, in her opinion, she said she didn't feel that you had to do that, and where this process was moving forward, you may want to wait. You could do small things, but she said any major changes really should wait and see what happens with the Charter Commission.
So just to repeat that, in Town Council's opinion, we have the ability but not the obligation to appoint a Charter Committee in a year ending in 0. So we
Correct.
could choose to hold off and allow the elected Charter Commission to complete their effort before doing so.
I would support that.
And Mr. Chairman, I read the guidance that we did receive by email on that, and just for my clarification, so it's okay in 21 to appoint. You could appoint it in 21. Is that? Well, that's how I read her explanation. Is that accurate, or if for some reason
It failed.
if failed or so forth, we could appoint one in 2021?
Well, she says in her opinion, in my opinion, therefore, the board may determine that it is not necessary to appoint a charter review committee at this time, and may instead wait until after the vote on the Charter Commission's proposal this spring.
Okay, so it was that. That's how it was read it, but I didn't think that was possible. But okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Do we need to vote on that?
I would like to, just as a matter of formality. So
Right.
So Chair would entertain a motion to, to appoint a Charter Committee.
So moved.
Am I getting the language right? I saw
Is it postponed? Jack, is it the postponement of the appointment of the Charter Committee? And then at that point, we can maybe vote to say, right, it'd be postponement?
So what if we say that we're going to defer it based upon the based upon the vote on the Charter Commission's proposal this spring, and if it should fail, we have the ability to then appoint a Charter Review Committee?
I think, Renee, one of the things that in the guidance that we received talked about if we could appoint one, even if it didn't fail, for grammatical cleanup or so on and so forth.
Right now, we could.
Yeah. So I would hate to tie it right to the election, just in case we decide to appoint it before for some reason.
If I could, Mr. Chairman?
Please do.
Yes, she did say that the board could decide to create a committee solely for the purposes of reviewing the charter, but for things that are not substantive in nature, grammar, internal references, gender neutrality, and the like. And if it comes to grammar, I won't be helping, I'll tell you that.
I would be also.
I was wondering what grandma was.
So I'm going to take another run at this. Chair would entertain a motion to defer the appointment of a Charter Commission pending the outcome. Oh, I saw her shake of the head. Renee, why don't you do this? I'll let you.
Where were you going on the second half?
I lost my train of thought.
All right.
It was a pretty violent shake.
Well, the lights aren't on anymore, so I wanted to, because you said commission. It's just Charter Review Committee.
Ours.
That was it.
Okay.
Ours is the committee. I know.
Jack,
it's
so
confusing.
you already, Jackie, I liked where you were going. Do yours, but just say committee instead of commission.
Okay. Chair would entertain a motion to defer the appointment of the Charter Review Committee.
So moved.
All right, motion and a second. Brad?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Renee?
Yes.
Yes.
And I too vote yes. So, great. Thank you, Mike, for talking to Lauren about that. Very good. Great. Why don't we keep on new business? We'll circle back to the licenses at the end. Discussion and or vote to accept Norton Cable Access is grant funding in the amount of $2,000 to the Norton Conservation Commission.
This is a grant that was awarded, I think it was last week. I don't have it in front of me. Jennifer will use this to have Serped use a drone that will help out in her master plan for the ponds, and $2,000, and she'll use that to hire Serped to fly over the ponds to develop their plan.
Great.
To make a motion to accept the grant.
Second.
Thank you. Brad?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Renee?
Yes.
I too vote yes. Thank you to the Norton Cable Access. It's very, very kind of them. Moving on to old business, we have Rennie from KP Law about the Reed and Barton update.
Mark Rich from KP Law.
Yes, good evening. How are you?
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think tonight, if I understand correctly, we're going to do an update on the current site. My understanding, we've had several discussions about this, as I'm sure all of you are aware. You know, the Reed Barton site is the dilapidated former site of the Reed Barton Company. The company went into bankruptcy and receivership. The property was contained within that bankruptcy and receivership property, and essentially the R&B receivership company went essentially dissolved, and the property currently is an orphan property. There is no entity that controls or manages that property. So as a result, we have a damaged property. The liquidation company no longer has any responsibility for it. The oversight of the bankruptcy process is no longer in place. The EPA and DEP have been working on portions of the property for cleanup because of oil and other contaminants on the site. At the same time, the town, under an order that was secured through our office, did take demolition of certain damaged buildings. I understand now there is concern about remaining buildings on the site and the issue about liability. From the last discussion that I had with the town manager and with consultants and town staff, it's clear that there are some outstanding issues, but the buildings in question are not imminently in danger of collapse. There is concern with a wood frame roof and opening to the weather, so some concerns there, and concern that EPA and DEP are wrapping up their cleanup. So the issue that seems to come back is what the town wants to do about the property. At one time there was some discussion about various options, acquisition, demolition, and the concern that continues to arise is that obviously the town does not have an ownership interest in the property. The town doesn't have oversight or responsibility for that property, it's my understanding that EPA, in completing the work they're doing right now and the funding that they currently have, that they will be leaving the site with booms in place to contain any hazards, that the building hazards are within the building, potential asbestos contamination. It's not clear whether there's been any release of asbestos, but it's contained within the building itself. So the concern that keeps coming up is liability for the town. Generally speaking, the town is not liable for private property. The town doesn't have responsibility for the buildings or the site. If the town goes onto the property, there's always the concern that the town acting on the property could become an operator at the site and incur certain liability. So at this point, I believe that the town, through its consultants and through its personnel, will be communicating with the EPA and DEP to determine where the property is going to be left. There will be obviously reports filed, closure, or I should say closure, since the site is not going to be fully closed out, but reports on the remediation as conducted by EPA and DEP, and those entities would likely be responsible for ongoing monitoring at the site. But I believe that they're going to complete their activities, and then the property will essentially remain stagnant until there's some reuse plan developed, which unfortunately is difficult given that there is no actual owner at the site. So that's really where we are at this point, and I'm certainly open and available for questions on the matter, since I'm sure that each of you has some questions and concerns about the site.
Thank you, Attorney Rich. I'm going to open it up to the board before I say my 2 cents on this.
Sure.
Can I say that was an excellent summary?
Oh, thank you.
That was fantastic, and I know we've gone back and forth with questions, and we did at our last session. I think the only question I have is, can you explain? It's been talked about taking over the property, but can you talk to like future liability? So the EPA leaves the site. We believe contamination is cleaned up. If the town does assume ownership of that property and additional contamination is found, what liabilities do we have either from that or people who may unfortunately be impacted by it?
Yeah, those are probably the most important questions and really kind of open up the whole issue. Because the reality is when EPA leaves the site, it's not going to be fully cleaned up. It's going to be contained. As I understand, there's obviously significant contamination on the site. EPA is going to contain what's remaining on the site, but they have not removed everything. So when we talk about liability, we look at it from a couple of different perspectives. Right now, again, the town is not liable for the site. The town doesn't own the site, doesn't have an ownership interest in the site, is not an operator at the site. The town took certain action to address imminent threats of public safety. That was the buildings that were bulging and appearing to be in imminent danger of collapse. And so those have been dealt with under a court order. The court order is pretty broad, and it's still in place that allows the town to take action on the site as necessary. But the town doesn't actually have an affirmative obligation. I know that there are concerns about what would happen if the building fell, say, into the street or onto a pedestrian or a car, and since the town is aware of this, is the town liable? And the reality is, again, it's private property. The town has the ability to take certain action, but not an obligation. And while that may sound like an odd situation, why wouldn't the town undertake efforts to protect its residents? I think by monitoring it, obviously you are seeking to protect the residents. The problem you get into, and this gets into the question that was just asked about liability, is the more you do on the site, the more potential you have for liability. The way Chapter 21E, which is the state hazardous waste law, operates, there's strict liability for owners and operators at the site, which means regardless of fault, if you're an operator at the site, you may be held liable for the contamination and the release. And in this case, where the town knows about the conditions, we wouldn't be going onto the site as essentially not having knowledge of what's on the site. having knowledge, the town goes on and runs the risk that if it exacerbates the conditions, the circumstances for liability could be essentially worse for the town. So there's always caution when you get into a situation like that. There are always parties that are looking to find someone on the site, and given that we don't have an owner, it could become the town. If the town was involved in actions on the site, the town could be essentially pulled into that strict liability situation. So in terms of future and reuse of the site, what we had discussed quite a while back is whether the town incurs liability if it acquired the property. And as I know of the site, there are outstanding taxes. There's a specific provision under Chapter 21E that exempts a municipality from liability if it takes property for non-voluntary circumstances, such as for tax liability. So there is an exemption that would allow the town to acquire that property and not be considered an owner or operator, even though the town holds the property for tax title purposes. However, even as it's holding that property, even though it's exempt from the liability, the town would have certain obligations. I outlined this in a letter a while back to the town. Would have certain obligations to essentially maintain the site to prevent outbreak of contaminants, to protect the public from the imminent hazards. So there would be certain obligations, though not an obligation to fully clean up the site. But that is a mechanism whereby the town could become involved in acquisition of the property and could avoid some of the liability. But then the town would have a large piece of property and would have to at least protect the public health and safety with respect to imminent hazards, would have to essentially ensure that there are no further releases, would have to secure the property against entry, would have to monitor and maintain the conditions at the site. So it wouldn't be without cost at all. As it stands right now, in my opinion, the town doesn't have direct liability because, again, the town is neither an owner or operator at the site, and the town would continue to work with EPA and DEP to assure that whatever they did at the site is maintained, and that if any other funding or opportunities arose, that EPA and DEP continue to be involved to the extent that they're able to.
And you mentioned, we'd have the obligations to maintain the site. If we failed to maintain that and somebody was injured or property was damaged, we would be liable for that.
If the town acquired the property, yes.
Okay, under the tax lien.
Yeah, even under the tax lien process, keep in mind there's 21E liability and there's other liability, and if the town took responsibility for the property, while there are exemptions under the Mass Tort Claims Act, Chapter 258, if you're the owner of that property and there are conditions that cause injury or harm as a result of that ownership, there is the potential for liability. And I say potential, luckily for municipalities, the Tort Claims Act provides a number of defenses from liability and also provides caps on liability. But obviously, holding property for tax title purposes is not quite the same as having a fee interest in that property. And in fact, one of the requirements under 21E for that liability exemption is that the town look to dispose of the property to rid itself of the ownership interest. That the town would have an obligation to market that property and to seek development, seek ownership from a third party. So you would be seeking to divest yourself of that ownership interest, unlike if you acquired it and then transferred it from, say, tax title purposes to some other town purpose, DPW purposes, or other purposes would actually become town property. If you took the property and then used it for town purposes, you would actually lose that exemption, and then you become a full-on owner, fully liable for the cleanup of the site.
Would we owe any previous costs to clean up the site at that point?
That's another interesting question. I've heard a lot of discussion about, we know that the Coast Guard has interest in that property from its cleanup activities, and obviously DEP and EPA. Their cleanup activities occurred prior to the, obviously would be prior to any acquisition by the town. I've never been aware of EPA or DEP seeking to force a municipality to pay back those costs. There is, of course, the possibility of EPA and DEP putting liens on that property, and then those would only become an issue when the town disposes of that property. And usually what happens in situations like that, everybody's very interested if there was a third party that wanted to develop that property. Everybody would be interested in seeing a third party come onto that property. So hopefully the EPA, DEP would not be seeking those costs, but it would likely not be against the town. I've heard discussion about the Coast Guard, and they're seeking recoupment of costs if the town simply came on the property to do cleanup and remediation. No one has actually presented me with the basis for that claim, so it's something that we would want to look into further. My recollection is representatives of the EPA, who we met with quite a while ago, talked about this, but they themselves couldn't cite to anything specific. We certainly would want to look into that before the town took any action. They talked about a 3-year period, I believe it was, and I think that clock has well been ticking, so I don't know how much more of that 3-year would be left, but I don't even actually know where that comes from. I hate to sound ignorant on the point, but I'm kind of skeptical about the claim, to be quite honest.
I appreciate your honesty about that.
Thank you.
And certainly understand that you can't have all the answers, and some of it's conjecture and just conversation.
I think that's exactly right. At this point, again, nobody has actually laid out the basis for that claim. So it may be in the nature of a lien being placed on the property, and again, that may be an issue for a third party acquiring it. We'd have to look into that further. It's just it's not something that's been fully presented. So we're at this point, because the town hasn't approached that issue. There's been no discussion with the Coast Guard, and the only mention was from the EPA representative.
And Jack, if I can just ask one more question. In your experience, have you, is it more difficult to try to find a potential owner of that property if there's a tax lien on it?
Yeah, I think what we have to recognize is, as the property sits right now, it's essentially worthless, because the cost to complete the cleanup, the cost to demolish the buildings, I don't believe any of those buildings are reusable. From my understanding from speaking to the town officials, I believe that anyone coming onto that site would have to demolish all or substantially all of the buildings. There would be no use. There's some very significant costs to reusing that property. So I think any dollar amount that's on that property in a negative would be problematic. My experience has been that in general, when properties like this are sold, when a town disposes of property under the 21E exemption through either the tax title process or through an RFP undertaken by the Board of Selectmen pursuant to the tax title process, the municipality doesn't get anything back. It just gets someone who can come in, make use of it, and hopefully put the property back on the tax rolls. But yeah, liens on the property certainly negatively impact the value, and that's why it's not uncommon for even EPA and DEP to forgive those liens for if they even have any. And at this point, I don't know if they have any liens on the property, given they even know that there is no owner of the property, and they'd be eager to see someone come on and take over the process, not have to pay for past costs.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can I raise a quick question?
If you don't mind, sir, I just want to wait until the other board members have a chance, and then we'll open up to the public.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Michael or Brad, anything on your end?
I'm good, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Set, thanks.
All right. My 2 cents here is, and I don't have a right to do this, but I'm annoyed that the town has been saddled with this property due to shortcomings completely out of our control years ago. I think it's not that life is fair, but I think it's patently unfair that now it is incumbent upon the town to try to find a way forward through this. You know, at best case, that property is an eyesore, and at worst, it's an active environmental hazard. So the residents that are in that area are, you know, looking to us to try to find a path forward. And as I'm hearing from you, Attorney Rich, there's not a clear-cut one that we can do this without taking on substantial liability, the extent of which we simply can't know at this point. And it sounds, even if we tried to figure it out, that may constitute actions requiring us to assume liability for whatever we find. It just seems like a catch-22, and I'm clearly not smart enough to see a way through this, but look forward to, you know, having a dialogue to get creative on whatever we can do to expedite the cleanup, make sure that the water in that area is clean for the residents and for the environment, and then work on taking down the structures that have hazardous construction materials inside them. So if there's anything you can add to that, Mr. Rich, or?
Well, I think that actually the comments you made are pretty much spot on, in the sense that this is classic in municipalities that have large industrial sites that come into this kind of a situation. I deal with a lot of them. I've been involved in the Walpole South Street Superfund site. I've been involved in the W.R. Gray site in Woburn. In each of those cases, though, there was an owner of the property, and even in your town, the Spack site is another one that comes to mind, where you have a PRP group that's actively involved. And you know, it may take a long time for seeing. I mean, Spack, we're still dealing with issues there. We're still dealing with issues at South Street in Walpole many years later. But the advantages are, again, you have parties that are actually actively working to resolve this. Whether they want to or not is not so much the issue. They have to, and ultimately EPA has a target that they can aim at. In your case, with respect to the Reed Barton site, Reed Barton's gone. There's nobody left. RB Liquidators is gone. And so when we went into court to get the court order to take down some of the properties, we named RB Liquidators, formerly known as and formerly operating as Reed and Barton. But that was just on paper. They never appeared. We spoke to them. They had no interest. They basically said, you know, have at it. They would give any permission necessary to go on the site. They don't care because they're not there anymore. They're an empty pocket. So it is incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating for the town, for the neighbors, to have a site like that and to see it put on the town. My experience has been, you know, very often DEP and EPA are happy to see towns get involved because at least the town is a functioning entity that's not going anywhere. So I've had conversations with DEP where DEP has said, oh, the town should just come on in and do the work. These are very expensive sites to clean up, very long periods. We know that it's been a lengthy process for EPA in doing what they're doing, and my understanding is they're running out of money, and they haven't even been able to finish the job. They'll stabilize the site. The cost would be forget just the cost of demolition. The cost of dealing with the subsurface contamination would be very expensive, and the more the town gets involved, there's the potential for liability. There are mechanisms to minimize that liability, but the expense is significant. And trying to find a third party to take over a site like this is not easy. And especially trying to find a third party that everybody would like to have on the site. There are reuses that could be considered that would probably not be favorably looked upon by the neighbors and looked upon by yourself. So yeah, it's a significantly frustrating situation. You know, towns going way back were very happy when mills were operating and manufacturing plants were operating. They were great sources of tax revenue and other benefits in terms of jobs and stability for municipalities. When they go away, when the big manufacturing facilities no longer serve a purpose, it's not just the loss of the jobs, but it's the significant impact of these abandoned sites. And we come to find out, unfortunately, that manufacturing techniques going way back were not as environmentally friendly and environmentally sensitive, and so we wind up inheriting the issues from these formerly very positive influences in municipalities. They then flip to the negative, and so your frustration is entirely warranted. And it's not a question of whether you're smart enough to figure out a good endpoint. I think it's common sense to realize that the mud there is very deep, and it's very hard to get out of that mud, so to speak.
If I can just follow up on one thing I heard you say there is when you went to court to get the access to demolish the buildings, you said you spoke with members of R&B liquidators? Or
We spoke.
Individuals, or?
It's essentially, they were attorneys who were the agents for, and essentially, RB Liquidators was put together through the bankruptcy process to liquidate the company. And once their job is done, like any liquidation entity, they're not an entity like they're not actually Reed and Barton. They're lawyers like me that are hired to just take on a specific task. And their task is to liquidate a once thriving company, not just the Norton aspect of it, but the company as a whole. Once they've reached an endpoint, they petition the court, and essentially their petition was to release this property from the bankruptcy process, because as the bankruptcy was over, they packed up and they're done. They walked away, and this is why I refer to it as an orphan property. The RB Liquidators doesn't exist anymore. The agents were just, it was just an address. And that's why they said, we can give you permission to go on the site, but we don't really have any role in the site. We don't really exist anymore. So it's just speaking to the folks whose name essentially was on an envelope. That's about it.
Okay. And I'm assuming that when those liquidators were named and created, there was no transfer of liability from the Reed and Barton property.
I think liquidators wouldn't liquidate property if they were going to inherit the liabilities. They're there for a very specific function to divest of that property and try to satisfy creditors. And creditors are not satisfied with a liability such as that building. And obviously, that was a negative on the balance sheet, and so that they had it. They essentially cut it loose to your detriment.
All right. Well, we thank them for that, I suppose.
I guess so.
Thank you, Attorney Rich. Assuming there's no further questions on the board, I'll open it up to the public. And I know we had Mr. Banks that was looking to speak.
Yes, thank you. My name is Steve Banks. I live at 29 Elm Street, so right down the street from the plant, and obvious concerns about the factory and particularly the environmental situation. Biggest concern relates to water quality and cleaning it up and doing it right. I know that this isn't a full hearing on that, but when you talk about liability, one issue I was a little confused about, because I looked at some of the documentation related to the Bristol Superior Court issuing a warrant demanding that the building be torn down. And I believe Norton's building inspector also made a previous demand. I don't know how that reconciles with the whole liability issue because we didn't do it. And I'm guessing you're going to say it was irrelevant because we didn't own the property. Maybe not. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then just to surface, I'm not an attorney. I have full respect for the legal opinion I'm hearing here. And quite honestly, I think it's the right thing for the town. So I'm not arguing, saying that the town should take ownership. But I say you gotta recognize that there is still considerable potential liability to the town by not taking action as well. Not direct liability, things do get to court. I'm sure the town would be a party to a lawsuit if something really bad happened. So I just don't want anyone to lose sight of the fact that there could ultimately be liability if a court said the town should have done more. So again, I'm not asking the town to take ownership. I get the legal opinion, and I am personally, all I'm asking the town to do is to work with the residents in the area and help us and guide us and make sure the town is doing everything that they can to help us reconcile the situation and reach a reasonable conclusion.
And I just want to add to what you're saying, Stephen. An occupier of property will generally be held liable for injuries occurring on the property, regardless of who the owner is. That's kind of a direct quote from an attorney we spoke to. And again, I agree. We just want this cleaned up. We don't care about ownership. We don't even care about what the property, looks like in the future. It's more about the condition that it's in. And it's my understanding, and maybe this is more of a question, if the court ordered you to go and take down that building, now it's left in a much different situation than it was before. The building was boarded up. There really wasn't anything there. Now that that building was taken down by the town, it, to me, created a much, much different situation over there. There's piles, there's debris, there's a whole section open. I mean, to me, it's the exposure and the way it is now that is super crazy dangerous. And that was done once that first building was taken down. So again, but I don't want to debate legal. I'm not a lawyer. I just think we need to work together to figure this out for the 125 people that this coalition represents.
If I can provide a little bit of clarification, if I may.
Please do.
I've heard both previous speakers talk about the town being ordered to take down the building. I think it needs to be remembered the town was not ordered to take down the building. The town obtained an order to enable it to take down certain dangerous buildings. The town brought the complaint itself. There is no order against the town. The town sought that order through its building commissioner in the interest of addressing certain conditions at the site. So again, there is no order ordering the town, and so that at this point, there isn't a foreseeable liability for the town, since the town is not the owner or operator of the property. There is a concern. I think I heard the last speaker talking about, and I don't know who was spoken to, but the idea of occupiers of property being subject to liability. That gets back to the 21E concern of owners or operators at a site becoming strictly liable for the conditions at the site, and that is the concern. But the town is not an owner, not an operator, and has not taken any ownership interest in that property. But again, I just want to make it clear on the order issue that it's not an order against the town.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
And then the other part that I heard that I would like some clarification on, either from Mike or we have our acting building inspector, Nick Brady, on the materials that are currently on site. Those are not as a result of the town's efforts, because I believe our costs included full demolition, remediation, and removal. Those materials, I believe, are placed there by the EPA as part of their ongoing cleanup. Mike or Nick, if you can...
You're correct. All the demo we did along Cross Street from the buildings that the building commissioner thought were in danger of falling on Cross Street, we removed all that material. What's there in that pile is from the EPA.
Right. Yeah, your building commissioner was very careful. He shared the neighbors' concerns, and he pushed very hard on this issue, and he would not have allowed a situation like that.
And Attorney Rich, do you know if the EPA has plans to remove that material, or are they going to, similar to anyone else that seems to be involved with that property, throw their hands up and walk away and leave?
My understanding, unfortunately, is that they are running out, if they haven't completely run out of money. So we can't direct them. We've been trying to be very cooperative with them. We've met with them, but ultimately, I have a feeling that if they've left it behind, they would deem it not hazardous, it might be unsightly, and it might be, unpleasant, but I would certainly hope that they would not have created a greater environmental liability condition than they started with. My understanding is that they're going to contain the contaminants with booms, anything that's contained. Obviously, there are contaminants under the slab of the building that they haven't reached to, but I would believe that the materials that they've left on the site, while unsightly, we would hope that they're not creating an environmental condition. But ultimately, that would be for them to address.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Michael.
Maybe it's the building inspector and Mr. Units to evaluate that pile. Is it a danger? I mean, we know it's not. It may not. We don't believe it's an environmental danger. But if someone got in there, I mean, I drove by that pile. It's a pretty nasty looking pile. Is it a danger to the public? And if it's a danger to the public, can we petition that? Can we maybe even go to court to say you left a dangerous situation? The EPA left a dangerous situation.
So, Mike, this is Nick Iafredi, the building commissioner.
Yeah.
The piles that are left there are clean from contaminants from what EPA has told us. They do not have any plans to remove those piles.
Yep.
They are fenced in, but I guess they could potentially pose a fire hazard if someone was to light them from over the fence. But they are contained within the fence. That is containing the property as a whole.
If a child got beyond the fence, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. If the child got beyond the fence, is there a danger that and started climbing on that pile? Is there a danger, public danger? It's debris from the building being torn down. So yeah, there's potential there. To answer your question. And I think that's, well, I don't know if there's any, obviously there's no money. EPA says it's environmentally safe, but if the town classifies it as a danger from their cleanup, I think the town should make a stance that it's a risk, and we should petition that those piles be cleaned up. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an attorney either, but if there's a public danger, you can't clean up the environment and then cause a public danger. That doesn't work. It's not. It's a stance that I think that we should, as a town, should be taking a stance on.
I agree with that, Michael. I mean, this is. I just sit here and I get more and more frustrated that this is. I have such empathy for the residents that are there that this property is now arguably in a visually worse way than it was, 4 years ago. Environmentally, we know more about what's going on there. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. Thankfully, Mr. Dorney has his hand up, and maybe he'll say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question would probably start out with the attorney, Mark. Is there any case law, case study that could point us in some sort of direction, path to kind of get this corrected?
Well, the way these cases usually unfold in the best case scenario is to sue the responsible party. All the case law deals with liability of responsible parties. And unfortunately, hence the frustration of everybody on this call, but the responsible party is gone. Reed and Barton and Reed and Barton liquidators simply don't exist as an orphan property. We can't unless EPA. It's very difficult to contemplate suing EPA to force additional action. That's a very difficult process. I know that there's discussion about reviewing all the options on the town side, but in terms of case law, I mean, I think the liability issue is very clear. What we're trying to avoid, obviously, is increased liability for the town. And I think for the neighbors realize it's not a situation, I don't think, where the town is taking action to, to abandon the residents because of, of fear of liability. But it's the logic of it that, the town only has, has limited resources itself and limited ability. And so it's a very difficult situation to undertake this kind of cleanup. But again, to the question, generally the course of action is to go after the party that that undertook the work that caused the conditions at the site. Now, we read Barton. There are, just as there are exemptions from liability for the town, there are exemptions obviously for liability for EPA and DEP. And I think unfortunately it all comes down to money. And it sounds, if I understand correctly, like EPA is just running out of money. They've spent an enormous amount themselves. DEP has spent money, and they've just run out of the funds to do any further work.
Now, just to follow up to that, so, I think we all look at it twofold. One, the environmental concerns, and then I think in front of that really is safety, public safety.
Absolutely.
And authority jurisdiction has already been implemented once by the building commissioner. Now, it's pretty evident that that would probably action be taken again if nothing gets done. So I think it behooves the town, the residents, or to collaborate and get in front of this instead of just waiting for something to happen. And I think it just makes sense that we all work together and address this pretty quickly, or as quick as we all can. But I just think, not, kind of thinking it through and kind of look at it as a chessboard. I don't know. I think we just need to, at a minimum, tear the structure down, and that would certainly take care of the safety concerns. And I know that Paul and the planning committee and board are working hard to get some funds and some grants. So I think with that being said, it's going to be a collaboration of a lot of things that need to be done with everyone getting involved. But I just really don't think it makes sense to wait. And
we spoke to Paul yesterday. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut anyone off, but we were speaking with Paul yesterday, and there is an effort to obtain some additional grant money. And to be quite honest, the debris pile is probably the easiest issue. I agree that it's an eyesore and it's dangerous if a child should or anyone should get onto that site. Somebody who's just looking for to create mischief or to just have fun as kids do. It's what we classically call an attractive nuisance, and it's a concern. But if it is in fact a clean pile and removal would not involve significant environmental issues, then that's probably an easier issue. That just becomes a money issue. In terms of the building, taking the building down is a more complex issue because you have the conditions inside the building, and then you have the potential for exposing additional contamination, and you're actively acting on a contaminated site. So each step you take, unfortunately, ramps up the cost and ramps up the liability issues. So these are all policy issues, obviously.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, finish.
No, I was going to say your comment about
you're making my point. You're making my point succinctly. So what you're saying is, it's a money issue, but what would happen 2, 3, 4 years, nothing gets done, and there is a fire, and that fire could spread chemicals beyond a good square mile. A square mile could be contaminated.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it make sense to get in front of it now?
So I think your point is well received, Mr. Dorney, and I look forward to having your support for any future FinCom articles that come up concerning this. So, and to that end, you know, I think it would behoove us to look at this in a serious way. Mike and Nick, can you go back and look at what it is to raise the entire building? I know Mr. Carmichael had done some work on that, and I believe it was somewhere around $1.4, $1.5 million. That was at least a year ago. I don't know what has changed. I'm sure the structure is further degraded. Interest rates are low, you know, and maybe we're able to put something on a future warrant to get this done. 'Cause I agree. It's if it's dollars versus safety. I mean, safety's got to come first. We have residents there. Just 1 second. I take solace in that the water reports that we've gotten through the EPA and DEP confirm that there is no risk to drinking water in there. So that makes me feel better. But in terms of everything else, I don't see another way forward other than the town stepping up into the void that's been left by every other responsible party along the way to do this. And somebody was trying to speak, and Attorney Rich, if you could just clarify for me, if we did go through and raise that building, does that then classify the town as you know, an owner-operator on that site with liability for whatever remains beneath the soil when we're done?
There's that potential. I mean, that is potential. One of the things I would recommend, if we're going down that path, before EPA and DEP, you know, pull up their stakes and take their tent away, we obviously should have a follow-up meeting, and Mike and I can talk about this. Having a follow-up meeting with those representatives who have been so long involved, and I think one of the benefits is, you know, cold comfort, but as you mentioned, the fact that the well testing has so far not shown levels of contamination above drinking water limits, and so we have at least some comfort in knowing that it has not created a condition in the water supply yet. Every inch we take further onto the property has the potential to increase the town's liability, but it's certainly something that we can discuss with the EPA and DEP to find out what they're leaving behind and what the town could expect. I think that conversation is already happening, and then you know, ultimately it's going to be a policy decision on the town side. I mean, I'm hearing everything that's being said tonight, and you know, a strong push on this matter. But you know, there are certain things that could be done not as an owner, and you know, Paul's referenced certain grants that require ownership, and that's a much more complex discussion. So I think that this is, you know, a lot of good information, good discussion tonight, and a lot to still be thought about.
And Jack, I think I'd like to add to this too. I mean, you know, I think we're all on the same page that we'd love to take that building down, but you know, as far as committing to that, like, we just had a meeting on the budget and we see the numbers that are coming in. Like, we do not have money, right? We do not have money. And we will not have money next year or the year after. Like, Rick, I understand what you're saying. Like, we should get in front of it. I would love to get in front of it if we had the money. We may have the money in 3 years, right? I also agree that just like we did with the building that came down, if there's an imminent threat, yes, we need to figure out how to pay for it. But right now, I mean, unless we can raise funds or Paul's successful in getting grants, like, this is not something that we can just say, yes, we're going to do and do it.
Oh, just a follow-up question for the attorney. So just as Reed and Barton created the RB liquidators, is there something that you can create as a kind of a circle to kind of protect the town as well?
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't quite work the same way because the town being a public entity. Obviously, there's always the ability for, on the private side, someone to create a company to try to oversee the cleanup of that site through an acquisition.
Couldn't you create an authority?
Like a redevelopment authority?
A redevelopment authority or a specific charter, an authority?
but that wouldn't necessarily protect the town from liability, because then that authority would have that liability, and it's not like creating, you know, an LLC. The process, the liquidators had no involvement in the site whatsoever, so they never had a finger on that site. An authority that takes over actions on that site would be stepping into the same potential liability, and they would be backed by the town. It certainly would not be a situation where they would spring out of thin air. Every town has the ability to create a redevelopment authority, but that's still an entity of the town.
Chairman?
Oh, sorry, Mike.
Just on the tear down of the building, Nick is getting prices, and you know, we're looking at between tearing down the building and having an LSP on site between 500, 600,000. We cannot borrow money to tear down a building. No one will loan us money for that, so it has to be money that's available to spend. And then we did have a discussion the other day that really what we're getting into now is this is really becoming a political rather than a legal situation on the property.
Right.
It's more of a political situation, and we need to get our state reps, our state senator, our congressmen, our U.S. senators, and work with them to get EPA to make a commitment to stay and clean that site up.
Hey, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Michael, thank you.
Two things, Mike. I think that's great advice right there, and I know Congressman Auchincloss, Congressman-elect Auchincloss had talked about coming in to see the selectmen here. So this might be in the new year an opportunity to invite him in, introduce ourselves, and then possibly bring this matter up to him as well. And he might be able to maybe do a site visit first, and then maybe have a discussion about it, and kind of see if he can kind of maybe help us champion it. But more importantly, and I think Attorney Reich had said it, and I apologize if I pronounced your last name wrong, sir.
Okay.
I think it is important, though, that the debris that is left behind there, that we still, I think we do address that if it's possible. I know it's going to be, we're running out of money, right? So, but I think if there is a danger risk there with those piles, I think I know the building's a risk, but those, when you look at them, I thought they were going to be removed, and I think that's a thing that we address kind of with the parties before they leave town.
I would like to look at, see if we have money left in the article that was used to tear down the buildings, and see if it would be proper to use any leftover money in that article to get rid of that pile.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may speak on that. So
Please.
part of the bids that I've been working on for the removal of the rest of that building, one of the line items is removing those piles separately. And what I'm getting back is we're looking at somewhere between 45 and 55,000 just to remove those piles. The other part of it, so the way I'm having the bid broken down is the remainder of the asbestos abatement inside the remaining structures as one line item, demolition of the buildings that are still up and intact as another line item, and then the removal of those piles as a separate line item. And what's coming back is like I said, somewhere between 45 and 55,000 just to get rid of those piles of debris.
Hey Nick, I'm gonna throw out something real quick. I know somebody said that those piles are clean and safe. Any chance there's an opportunity that our fire department might need it for some training, and we can move and burn them?
I actually thought of the same thing, but I think probably the problem though is because you're on a hazardous waste site, the liability of bringing your firefighters onto the site. Because we talk about that, they're
Oh no, I'm saying move it to like their site.
I think, Renee, I think there's going to be a cost incurred in just moving those piles too, and I haven't I think that's a good idea. I'll talk to Chief Simmons and see if it's of any interest at all. But I think there's still going to be, there's still going to be a cost to move those piles to a certain site. What that cost is, I don't know, obviously at this point, but definitely worth the conversation.
This is Paul Durkin. I mean, in disposal of waste, like debris waste, there's a lot of different contaminants typically in it. The big one being just lead paint. Anything that was painted before a certain time frame has lead paint. Now, it may pass a T-clip, but as everything breaks down, then basically you have lead basically getting into the ground in the surrounding area. Obviously, you don't want kids playing with that. In regards to the asbestos, we either deal with this now or the building falls down. Every time the roof or siding goes, you're going to have friable asbestos. What are you going to do? Shut down Elm Street? It's just, it's so close to the road, you're going to have to start monitoring as it decays. As it decays, you're going to have friable asbestos, and anybody going by is going to be exposed to it. And in regards to the environmental sampling is extremely limited. It's only surface water. Chlorinated solvents are very deep. They're heavier than water. So you're looking at what is the bedrock contamination underneath and what is that affecting our aquifers that people are tapped into surrounding the property. And I haven't seen, I'm very interested in seeing the phase 2 environmental work to understand that. And maybe it's not an issue, but from the data that I've seen, it's just surface. Understand this is a complex area because of the 2 dams. But contamination probably came out of this site for the last, before the 60s and 70s, it just got discharged into the stream. So what's down gradient of the stream into the marshlands? I don't think, I haven't seen any of that. So it's a more complex problem. The chlorinated solvents last up to 20 years. It's a problem. If we're still getting results of toluene that should have, there's sources on site that are still coming up with numbers, and the sampling's not extensive enough to understand during low flow types of situations what the numbers are. And so, to make sure that the area or the people drinking the water are using the water for sprinklers or anything else in the area, that's an unknown right now in my eyes. So we're going to be getting a phase 2 report from the environmental consulting at the end of the month.
I defer that question to town manager or Mr. Brady. I'm familiar with that.
I have not heard when their report is going to be done.
Nor have I. We're still waiting on it.
Yeah. I haven't seen any on-site testing to understand. And the wells that I've seen are on Elm Street down gradient in very high level surface water, which is heavily diluted. And so where your real sources are is basically unknown at this point, and that's why typically you knock down the building before you start your work. It makes it more cost effective too. It's great that the EPA is doing the work, but they're creating a tremendous cost where somebody on a personal side would have gone in and just knocked down the building and then did the remediation process. Trying to do it within a building is difficult, very costly. But it's great that they're doing the work and we want them to continue, but I'm still questioning, they haven't found the source because it's still coming down, and that doesn't make any sense to me. So,
Hey, Mike, how old is this building? Do you know? Anybody remember?
I don't remember. I don't know if Paul and Nick have an idea.
I truthfully don't remember off the top of my head, Mike. It's in the file, but I don't have it in front of me.
Anyone who lived there have any idea? Who lives there? I said that funny. No?
There's so many different sections that have been added on that.
It could be over decades.
It was originally called Talbot Mill.
it was a textile.
That's why Talbot Drive and Mill Lane, those streets are named after probably Talbot Mill. So I think it goes back probably to the turn of the 20th century, the 1920s or so.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think you talk
Even older than that. Older.
Is,
Yeah.
yeah, at least 100 years old, the original part of the building.
Did anybody ever take a look at the wetlands? I know, did the town acquire those wetlands off of Elm Street?
No. Are you talking?
The conservation land?
I'm not sure where you're talking about on Elm Street.
On like halfway, going towards the college on Elm Street. There's, I forget the name of the conservation land.
I think it's called Coogan.
Yes. Is the town owner that? Was it given to them?
I don't know. But, Mr. Chairman, if I could suggest, that we'll have Nick finish getting his prices, and hopefully soon we'll have the report from CEC. And if we can get the congressman into a future meeting and keep this going.
Yeah, it's very disheartening to hear you say that we would not be able to borrow for this, meaning that whatever amount comes up is going to need to come out of our operating budget in the whole sum. That makes it far more challenging to operate a potential $2 million hit versus annualizing that over 20 years or whatever. And I'm assuming there's no exceptions or leeway or anything we can ask for with the state to do that. I mean, it really handcuffs us. I don't know what else to do with that.
Well, that's the other thing with the, we really need that grant from the state. Hopefully our state rep can help us with that.
I'm going to put my Peter hat on for a minute and say that I did find an article that said the Talbot & Sons Mill was burned to the ground back in May 28th, 1909. So that property existed at least 111 years.
That's right. Right, that's right. And also, I found this back on the night of Tuesday, May 30th, 1978, that a fire swept through the old Talbot Mill complex at the corner of Elm Street, and with $80,000. The two firefighters were injured, double suffered smoke relation, and an estimated $80,000 of them was sustained as a result of a fire that swept through the old Talbot Mill complex at the corner of Elm Street and Cross Street early that night. So that is a fire hazard, and this is history repeating itself if it happens again.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And also, I have an article in the old Talking Advocate from October 1980, and this is a shot of some state and federal workers working on the Shabak property in Norton, Attleboro line. So history could repeat itself if we don't take care of this.
So hopefully Norton can learn from its lessons in the past and find a better way forward. Thank you, Peter. Any other on that? I appreciate the residents in that area joining us tonight and A lot of good things to add there. I understand. I can only begin to imagine how frustrating it must be to have this looming over your heads. I hope you hear from us that, you know, we empathize greatly. We are committed to try to find a way forward, and you've heard tonight just how complicated that way forward is for us at this point in time. But I think you have a commitment from us to continue to try, and just ask for your patience and continued cooperation on that.
And hi, this is Cheryl. I just want to say thank you so much, Jack, first of all, from everyone that's part of the coalition and the neighbors here. And I know we don't want to talk about it anymore, but just food for thought. A bunch of you mentioned this, you know, and maybe you already addressed it, but obviously if we can push the EPA to do anything else and more at that site, it relieves the town of the cost, obviously, and addresses all of our environmental concerns, which is so heavy around here. You know, we don't feel safe with the water and the situation that it is. So anyways, food for thought. I think if we can just somehow figure out from a legal avenue, from a whatever you need from the coalition to try and get the EPA to stay on and take on any more costs for demo would be ideal.
My hope would be that, again, as I said earlier, that before EPA and DEP do in fact pull out, that, and I know that there's a good group of town staff that has been working on this, plus your consultant, that we could grab the EPA folks into a meeting, find out where they are, and yeah, quite frankly, try to push them. And I think there's a political end to it as well, beyond the legal end. I think there's policy and political considerations, and having your state delegation involved as well. But I agree, to try to push EPA against the wall as much as we can. I think that's beneficial to everybody on this call.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Rich. Appreciate it.
And also, another historical tidbit. This is the site of the Norton fire scene. The Norton firefighters site from Wednesday, June 22nd, 1988. There was a fire at the Eureka Manufacturing Company Incorporated building plant on Elm Street, right?
I'll just leave with this closing thought. I walk my dog by there quite frequently, and I've gotten to know some of the workers. And one gentleman, he's been in this business for 28 years, and he said to me, it's such a beautiful property, beautiful piece of land with the water body and the Rumford River. And he said, at 28 years, this is probably top 5 pieces of property that he's seen that could really, we could see the jewel behind it. But right now we got some real serious work to do to make everything, right. So
I agree, Mr. Doing. It has a lot of potential there. I can see why that was an early choice to put a town hall and senior center on. It would have been a very picturesque scene. All right. I thank everyone for their contributions here. Attorney Rich, thank you for coming back and speaking to us in comprehensible legalese. Look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, and I'm sure this will not be the last time on this issue. So I look forward to working with the town manager and town staff to try to at least address some of the immediate issues and see where we can go in pushing the folks who are on the site right now.
All right.
Thank you so much.
That's my issue, and the 1909 fire that took place. Thursday, May 27, 1909, and 3 large storehouses were burned. Lots of money well owned by anti-village destroyed in incident case that fire was working into. So once again, history is going to repeat itself if we don't do something fast.
All right. Thank you, Peter. All right.
All right, I'll say good night now.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you do as well. Thank you.
Righty.
Jack, can I ask Rick to hang on for a second?
You can ask him.
And maybe unmute himself.
there you go. Yep.
Rick, I actually had an item on my selectmen's list tonight just to ask of Mr. Eunice, and actually I think that you might be better positioned to answer it, maybe. remember the distribution, the propane distribution tank that was put on South Washington Street?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know the structure that's going in front of it? Is that part of the project?
No, that's the neighbor. That's the 186.
Okay.
That's the next property over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's United Materials Management, UMM.
Okay. And I'm assuming that's not impacting like the tank or anything? Vibration?
No,
Okay.
it's actually, I believe it's going to be a maintenance, like a service bay for like the trucks, you know, they bought dually services.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. Thank you so much.
Correct. Mike might know, confirm that. Yep. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dornigan. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. And thanks, Jack. Sorry, I wanted to catch him before he left.
Oh, yeah, it's all good. I've lost all control, so. Returning to our agenda.
Do you have an agenda?
Actually,
I thought that was a great discussion, so.
no, it was. That was phenomenal. I'm very glad. I'm glad we did that.
It's unfortunate, like it's not the thing I want to talk about is, you know, we're dealing with a pandemic and going into the holidays because it's more bad news.
I just wish there was an answer that we could magically conjure up that would, like, even if we were able to bite the bullet and pay for it ourselves. I mean,
I think Jack, I think back to Mike's point, and it's become political. So I think it's going to be a long process. The site will end up sooner or later being cleaned up, but it's not going to be as quick as I don't think anyone on this call has wanted. But it's going to be a slow, arduous process.
Speaking of a slow, arduous process that is our meeting this night, we're going to move on to the town maintenance report. Mike, what do you got for us?
Wait, Jack, did we skip the renewal?
Licenses. You going to do licenses?
I'm keeping those to the end. We'll just do that.
Okay.
I just wanted to remind the board that someone's got to do the selectmen's report for the town report to cover the period July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. And if you could think about someone you want to dedicate the town report to this year, and also get ready for pictures in January. I don't know how we'll do that.
How are we doing that?
I don't know how we're going to do that this year. I'll have to think about that one. That might be impossible. I can see that he'll just take a picture of the screen. That would be appropriate. It would.
You do it with us just.
Size 2020. We'll just have the photographer take a picture of this screen and put it on the book.
Yeah, honestly, you send all of us a background. We all have the same background, and you do that, and it's just the 5 of us, 6 of us.
Maybe you have
And a mask.
And I just wanted to recognize a couple employees. I know Becky over in the fire department, she's been really, Rebecca Murray, she's been working really hard on FEMA, and one of the towns called us recently and said the FEMA representative told them that everybody should go to Norton and get trained by her because she knows how to do the process and no one else does. So he just said, I wish everyone would go to Norton and speak with Becky. So I want to thank her for all the work she's been doing on that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, now that you've let out the secret, now we're going to be missed FEMA funds because everyone's going to be calling Becky on how to fix it.
Mike, I was thinking that as a potential revenue stream, right? Let them call, but we charge.
Charge them, sure.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to recognize Joanne D'Onofrio in the highway department. There was a post on Norton Neighbors recently, and this woman said that she was affected by the Route 123 project, and how helpful that Joanne has been to her in answering all their questions in dealing with her craziness. She said she's a true gem. So I know that when Joanne took over down in the highway department as the clerical staff, she probably never envisioned that the Route 123 project was coming online. She'd be in charge of working on takings and easements and people calling all the time to find out what everything's about. She just has a great way of explaining things to them, and I want to thank her for that.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing, Mike. That's great.
I had a question going back to one of Mike's earlier points. Do you recall who we dedicated the last report to?
I don't. I'll let you know tomorrow. I'll check it out. I forget.
I know we talked about Mr. Kimball, and then I don't remember if that's what we decided on since he was also running. I'm fairly certain it was him, but I can't recall.
All right, I'll check it out. I forget.
Okay. If it wasn't him that year, I think it would be appropriate to do so this year. Let's confirm.
I'm 99% sure that we did dedicate it to Bob.
Okay.
Did you say we did or did not, Brad? It cut out.
I think he said
We did.
We did? Okay.
I'm almost positive that Mr. Kimball was the recipient.
That's right. Bob was the recipient.
All right. Great. Well, if anyone has any ideas on who to dedicate to, please send them to me. We can get them and make a selection. It's a good tradition to have. Alrighty. Anything else, Mike? We don't have Mr. Zahner on. How are we looking COVID-wise? Do you have anything you can share?
It's been an interesting week. Obviously, the numbers are going up, and Wingate has been a big part of that. I think they were up to 75 in there, 50 residents and 25 employees, somewhere in that area. In some of our departments, we had employees that tested positive. So everyone seems to be doing okay, and some have gone through the process and are back, and we still have quite a few out. So we're trying to limit interaction from building to building as much as possible, so that we don't have people from the police department coming in our building and we're not going in their building, and also limiting the staff that are in our building at any one time. So hopefully we can get through this and get the vaccine, and by the spring, hopefully be ready to go.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Mike. Anything else for Mike?
My message to COVID: wear my mask, wash your hands, stay safe, be positive, and use smart thinking when celebrating around the holiday time, because this holiday season, celebrating the holiday fans, we want to have a normal Christmas, a normal Thanksgiving, because I want to get back to things that I love to do.
I agree, Peter. We have the light at the end of the tunnel. Let's not spit the bit so close to the finish line.
Yeah.
We are there. I look forward to hugging my mom again. I'll tell you that. So hopefully a few more months we can do this. Okay.
So we got this. We got this, and we'll be back to normal soon. And we're at the finish on it. Don't blow it, Norton and U.S. and.
Here. Select Board report and mail. Anyone have anything to share this week?
I just had the one item that I asked about earlier. And Mike, I don't know if you're aware of anything else about that building going up?
It is what Rick told you. I forget the name of the company, but it's a repair facility for, they took over Dooley Waste Disposal, and it's a repair facility for them. I'll send you the plans. I'll go on to Permitize and send you the plans.
Right, is that new, like net new business for us in town?
It is, yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, I'm hearing those familiar crickets again. I'll just say for the record, for anyone who didn't hear, the ongoing dispute between Comcast and WCVB was resolved amicably this past week. So WCVB will continue to be available through Comcast Xfinity television in the local area. So I know that was a hot topic around here, even with our state legislatures. So good news there. All right, warrants and minutes. I have approved payroll warrant PR 21-13 for the week ended December 12th, 2020. Warrant dated December 15, 2020 in the amount of $1,541,831.32, as well as invoice warrant AP 21-25 dated December 17, 2020 in the amount of $943,573.25. That brings us to the minutes, which we good to approve those three.
I have to admit, I have not had time to look at any since last week.
I've gone through them lightly and didn't see anything that jumped out at me. I'm comfortable holding off until our next meeting if we think that that's better. Give folks a chance to do it if we're comfortable. I'm sure Brad's read them. I know I've gone through them.
I have not.
Yeah, I'm all set anytime.
Hey,
If you
Brad,
guys
this
have,
meeting's
go
going
ahead.
so long. Brad, this meeting's going so long. Is your knee better yet?
Only 2 hours.
No, actually my knee's starting to ache. About halfway through the meeting, I had to put the brace back on.
We'll try to speed it up here. All right. So if we're good, Chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from November 12, 2020, November 19, 2020, and November 24, 2020.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right. Brad?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
May?
Yes.
And I too vote yes. And now we'll jump back up to the top, and we only have a few licenses to do. So, Chair would entertain a motion to do the following 2020 renewal license. KMPZ Inc., DBA Honeydew Donuts, 61 West Main, Common Vic. FADL Inc., DBA Main Street Pizzeria, 63 East Main Street, Common Vic. Gregory Degnan, DBA Blockbuster Auto, 409 Old Colony Road, a Class 2 used car dealer's license. Edward Fontenot, DBA Colonial Motors, 380 Old Colony Road, Class 2 used car dealer's license. Kevin's LLC, 187 West Main Street, Class 1 agent or seller's license for sale of new motor vehicles. And Old Colony Cars, Inc., 350 Old Colony Road, subject to receipt of $25,000 bond for a Class 2 used car dealer's license.
Mr. Chairman, please read the note above it. Please note.
So, yep, and all subject to the receipt of 304 certificate signed by the fire chief and building inspector. Thank you, Michael.
So moved.
Seconded.
Right, Brad,
Yes.
Michael,
Aye.
Renee,
Yes.
I too vote yes. And,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
could I just say something quickly again? I know I mentioned it before about the work Jen does on those, but I was listening to her on the phone this week, and I'm thinking the amount of time and the way she helps people out is amazing. And it just boggles my mind. I'm like, these are renewals. They do it every year. But I don't know, some people just need to have their hands held and pull through the process. She's done a great job with that.
So thank you, Jen.
For someone who's been around for 12 years, I want everyone to realize what a gem Jen is, getting these licenses out early and getting them back to us. And I can remember the first couple of years on the board, how 95% of the licenses weren't approved until after the 20th of December. And within the last 3 days of the year, we would have to have a special meeting to get the remainder of the licenses voted on and signed, because it just wasn't taken care of as efficiently as Jen does this. She's excellent at this and makes it a lot easier for all of us.
Well, I'm certainly glad that we can reap the benefits. Thank you.
I gotta say, I'm really feeling the love tonight.
I mean, it's really is this love fest is crazy.
I'm about to break out in tune, I gotta tell you.
Normally it's the sap one thanking people, but I mean, really, it's coming from everybody. It's the Santa hat, Renee, and the get lit.
That's it.
I think
It's this one, Jack. We're all doing it.
Here we go.
I think it's my pain meds.
Yeah, right.
Well,
all those happy pills.
Okay, we have one item. Actually, I have one question for Mike. Do you have any insight as to when that West Main Cafe is coming online?
I haven't heard anything about that. Jen had mentioned months ago about the sign out there, but no one had pulled any permits or anything. I'll check again on Permitize tomorrow. But
I have a little update. I know the guy that plans on opening it did contact me asking for application paperwork, but I sent it to him at least a few weeks ago. I haven't gotten anything back yet, though. But that's all I got. I don't know his name. I just know that he did ask for paperwork, and that was the company he mentioned.
And Mike, did you say they haven't pulled permits?
I don't think, I'll have to check tomorrow. I mean, the last time I checked, and I don't know how long ago that was, they hadn't pulled any permits since then. Is there work being done down there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Maybe they have by now, hopefully. I'll check tomorrow. Thanks.
Hopefully we didn't get somebody in trouble, but maybe they're just changing the paint. I don't think you need a permit for that, but we'll see.
Mr. Chairman, we actually have one more thing to vote on the licenses. Were you aware of that?
We have the ABCC 2000
Okay, yep. Okay.
Season population increase estimation form.
If I could just talk on this, we could bring it back another meeting, because I know you're gone long. Under the law, it says by March 1st each year, the community can submit a number to the state on a seasonal increase in population. That's really structured for vacation areas. Because you think down the Cape, if they went by the year-round population, how few liquor licenses and restaurants they'd have down there, but their populations double in the summer. But what I want to see is if there's any way that Wheaton College could play into this. So the way it's set up right now, it says you'd notify them by March, and then it would be the increased resident population in the town as of July 1st and July the 10th, excuse me. And you'd get one additional license under Section 15. It would be effective from April 1st to November 30th. And you get one for every 5,000 of seasonal population. So I'm not sure there's even enough there that would help, and I want to see if that would even count. So I've talked to Wheaton. I've asked them to give me a count on students they know that live on campus and that they know live in housing around Norton during the school year. So I'll get back to you with that at another meeting.
Okay, so it's not something we need to vote on tonight.
Hey, Mike, can I ask 2 questions on that?
Yep.
Is it total population? It's not like age-based?
It mentions, not surprisingly, it mentions nothing about age base.
And my second question, do we know when we're getting the census data back?
I don't, I think Lucia had said probably not until June or July.
Okay.
All right. All right. Any other business to come before the board? Hearing and seeing none, Chair would entertain a hope motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
So, second.
All right. Brad?
Jack,
Yes.
for discussion.
Oh, Jesus. Yep.
I know, but listen, it's the spirit of giving. It's been a hellish year, and I just want to wish everybody a very safe and happy holiday, and thank you all for the grueling hours that we went through, especially since Meg joined, and our 4 and 5 hour meetings. But thank you guys. It's been a roller coaster this year, but who better to take the ride with than the folks on this call?
See, that's just the love is pouring out of everybody. Thank you, Renee, right back at you.
She didn't make a whole motion like you asked though.
I know. Thank you, Peter.
There it is.
All right. Before Renee gets any sappier, we have a motion, second to close. Brad?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Renee?
Yes.
And I too vote yes. I hope all of you out there in Norton Land have a happy, safe, and COVID-free holiday. Please be careful out there.